The Ryan X-13 is unique. It's an answer to a question that was posed in the 1950s. We found out that the Russians had a battle plan for us. They were going to win World War III by knocking out the runways for all of our largest bombers. The B-36 could actually only take off and land on a handful of bases around the planet because of how big an aircraft it was and how much room it needed to lift off. So when the Russians found out that our strategic bomber had that limitation, they decided to come up with a war plan that would take out each of those large runways. So America needed to respond to that idea, to that threat. And the response that we had was the word went out to all the major aircraft companies. If you were working in America at this time, we came up with a bunch of projects that didn't require runways. We came up with the Sea Dart, an aircraft that could go Mach 1, taking off and landing from ocean, a lake, any flat water. Another project that came out of that was the British Harrier. In fact, when that Harrier wobbled up into its first horizontal flight, most of these special projects went to the junkyard. This is one of those special projects that didn't require a runway. The Ryan X-13 had 10,000 pounds of thrust in that engine. And that's how much it needed to be able to essentially hover like a helicopter, but it hovered vertically. That caused a whole lot of problems when it came time to take off and land, specifically for the pilots. They found out that two of the test pilots were getting extremely nauseous. They were having some real problems keeping their lunch down each time they tried to land this aircraft because it lands up against a giant board. You actually hook it on, essentially like a naval aircraft landing using a tail hook. This aircraft used a nose hook. It would come in, it would fly in vertically and fly up to that panel, and the pilot would feel his way forward until the hook hooked on. The problem is that took so much concentration that for two of the pilots, the closer they got to that board, they were sick to their stomach really, really bad. The fix is so interesting to me. The engineers said, well, this is a human problem. This isn't a problem with the system, so let's address the human part. So they looked at the two test pilots that were having the problems, and they figured out that the color of that backboard was exacerbating the problem, making it worse. So they changed it. If you look at old footage of this aircraft, on some of the flights, you see it's got one color to a backboard. In other flights, it was a completely different color depending on the test pilot. Now, none of these were a really good idea. It's more proving a concept, proving that the enemy's plan wouldn't work. So even though these they didn't father a whole dynasty of different tail-sitting aircraft that could take off and land like that, even though it didn't happen like that, it is an evolutionary dead end. At the time, it was stretching the envelope for manned flight. It was a new direction that we hadn't gone before. So the X-13, these days, it's nothing more than a museum piece in the corner of a hangar. But at one time, this represented that upper right-hand corner of the flight envelope. We were stretching our knowledge using airframes just like this X-13.